Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I'm so excited to bring Quilley back. Well, not back. You haven't been here before, but Quilley has come back from being off the internet back onto the internet. And the first thing I said was, welcome back. Come onto my podcast. So here we are. Quilley Powers, thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here, Beth. I admired you for years. All you do. You
Aw.
you make a real difference for people.
Oh,
You know
thank
that.
you. Oh, well, I don't know. I try. Once in a while, I get a hater, but it's all good. Well, I wanted to bring you on because I've always been really fascinated by your background. I think it was a few years ago we started having kind of back and forth, and I know a little bit of your history and what you're up to, but I really wanted the world to hear this. I think it's very important. I do have to say I've also been very inspired. I keep wanting to do this message keeps coming through that I want to do like the elder project and just interview really amazing, powerful elders in this community and get their voices heard. My mom is older, and it's really brought up a lot kind of watching her end of life process, and it's made me think like, wow, we really need to get these voices recorded more than ever, especially our world today needs your voice and your wisdom. So I'm going to read a little bit of your bio, but I really want to hear your version of this. So I'll just share a little. Quilley is a social worker by education, practicing for almost 6 years with the elderly in the 60s. She explored different psychedelic medicines under the tutelage of Leo Zeff in the early 70s. At the same time, she was using recreationally quite regularly with many in that era. Her first non-dual experiences were with the Grateful Dead on medicine. Wow. And she's been practicing meditation for over 30 years and has accumulated about 3 years of silent retreat practice, including 21 days in the dark. And she's a Theravada Buddhist practitioner. And this is where I want you to share all of this, because I know you were involved working at Spirit Rock Meditation. You're now being trained or you're already trained as a death doula, and now you're doing additional training. And I want to hear about what you're up to, and also this path of being a Buddhist, being on the Buddhist path, and then also being on the medicine path, and how they might be intertwined. So Quilley, please share your story. How did you come to all of this?
Well, it's hard to say. I guess we bring in, when we're born, certain ways that we are and what we magnetize to us. I don't know the answer to that, because how do we? Even twins are different, so, but, I came of age in the 60s, and there was a lot going on then, and I was all in, you know. And Leo Zeff is often considered the grandfather of psychedelics. And so I got involved with him, which was kind of unusual to have sacred experiences with psychedelics at that time. And I got to try a lot of different medicines. Really, what most people were doing was recreational LSD is what people were doing. And I suppose other people did other things, but and eventually it did get changed. But that was what I think of as a really important aspect of how I became the woman I am today. But there's a lot of other things that have fed into that, of course. So when I came of age, I'm just going to speak about sex a little because it's a huge women's issue. At that time, we got three pieces of information. We got legalized abortion. By then, I had already had a child out of wedlock. And then we got birth control pills, and we got the information that women were usually not orgasmic through intercourse. So those three things really changed what a woman's path. So you can't ignore that, because women, that gave us a sense of feeling free. So I got involved with a group of people that were teaching that information. And that was a very interesting aspect too. So I had a community of like-minded people. And I'll just so then but I was still, I went to college and I became a social worker and I was working, and I think that working with that elder population was always part of what I've done. I've gone into many, many, many nursing homes and just been a volunteer. Yes. And I got married and had a baby and did the things that were also happening. And then I'll just fast forward to 1993 because it was a big year. My 25-year-old son died, and it was quite a jolt. And I really realized instantly the first words out of my mouth when I was told were, "I don't want to learn that lesson." And I always have been a little proud of that sentence because it's a negative way of saying, "Okay, here we go." And I would say that ate up the primary part of the next decade. I was fortunate enough to work with Stephen Levine before they went into isolation, and he was a Buddhist person that worked with a lot of pain and suffering and illness and death. He started the Living Dying Project with Ram Dass and Dale Borglum. And he pointed me at getting involved in death work. So I went to work for the Living Dying Project. And there was still a lot of AIDS people dying, so there was plenty of interesting things to do. During that time, after Guy died, I started to meditate a lot more, got much, much more serious. And I did go to work eventually at Spirit Rock, just because I felt like I was aging. And that was when I was much younger, older. And but I was working as a paralegal for one thing, and my steel trap mind was like not there anymore. And I really have realized at about 40, looking in the mirror going, you're gonna have to develop beauty from another place, right? Because it's fading, and you can't rely on that. And I think I had relied on it a lot to get into doors and, get the job, get what I wanted. And so when I was losing that steel trap mind, I realized, okay, what is this good for? Like, why do I want to? I don't want to resist losing it. And so what I really noticed was that intuition is, as that part goes, you make room for intuition, and that's usually the case with if you're losing something, you're gaining something. So that's an attitude that got me over to Spirit Rock, and I just retired from there, and I think I worked there 11 and a half years as a meditation retreat manager. So that was a wonderful job. And I got to do a lot of meditation at a price that I could afford, a staff price, which made it workable for me. And yeah, so then those years after Guy, I did a lot of meditation practice after Guy died. And, doing a lot of hospice volunteer work and things that led me to doing training when I heard about death doulas and what is his name? Henry Feiss. I can't remember his name exactly, but he wrote the first book on death doulas and formed an organization called ANELDA, and that's where I trained. And now there's lots of places and different takes on death doulas. We just had a wonderful gathering of all I live in Northern California, all the Bay Area doulas that these two women knew about. And there was about 80 people on their list, and we had a 30-something at the gathering. And so that was really interesting. Women that were doing, mostly they're women, but they're not all women, they there was a woman there that she's done home funerals for 20 years, so she knows that world, and just so many interesting niches. And mine has turned out to be psychedelics. And so that's kind of the intersection of meditation, dying, and awakening is my niche. That's,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. And I want to dive into this a little bit more. The one thing I thought was really interesting when we first connected is you had mentioned working with 5-MeO DMT.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow. I mean, that is super powerful. I'm curious, was that a recent experience? Like, and how did you come to that and then come to start working with it? And how is it? I mean, I think any of us that have had that experience knows that it's kind of like maybe, I mean, we don't know what death will be like because we haven't experienced it. But then the only way I can describe that experience is I died and then I came back to life. But I'm curious, like, was there an interest around something to do with that, like how it works and that process? Or was it just kind of like, oh, another psychedelic exploration and let me try it?
So there was an old friend of mine who had never done any psychedelic at all. And she worked at Spirit Rock, so I knew her well. And she went and had this experience. And I was like, I wasn't doing psychedelics so much as I used to. And I said, yeah, I want to do that. And so she sponsored me with this first person. And it was a little bit much. Turns out I'm very, very sensitive to most medicines. I'm just willing to go, okay, yes. I just go in.
Mm.
So she had another person that she had done it with, who I think you know pretty well. And so I just started thinking, well, how am I going to work with this medicine? I can't afford this, and it's, so I just made myself indispensable to him, truthfully. And I would pick his daughter up from school if he couldn't do it, and I'd stay overnight if he was going someplace, and just really. And then I started assisting him, and he used my place a lot,
Mm.
which is kind of funny because I live in a 2-room small apartment in a retirement community, but it worked. And so when he went back to Australia, um, I kind of started serving by default. I didn't really have the intention, but he was very encouraging, of course. And so that's how it happened. Yeah, it just sort of happened. And he also always says that, about a quarter of the people who experience five immediately want to start serving it. And
Mm.
I wasn't in that camp. I didn't really think this is what I want. I'm sort of past the age of looking for a career. It's ironic that the last person I served, I actually had the thought pass through, I wonder if this will be the last person I serve. And it wasn't that I thought it would and actually it's not, but it just, the thought comes, and that thought, as you age, happens with various threads of your life. I wonder if this will be the last time I'll, you know, whatever the fill in the blank.
Wow. Wow.
So that's how I started doing it.
What are your thank you for sharing. I'm curious, do you have any theories as to why that particular medicine is here for us now? I mean, I'm very fascinated by the fact that, it's found in the brain, right, or in the human body, and they say it comes through when we birth and comes through when we die, and and then the experience feels very like death-like. I mean, who knows what that means, but do you believe that it's like a helpful teacher for, death or life, or is it just like, oh yeah, it's kind of like a profound experience? Like, what are your views on it, especially coming from your Buddhist background,
Well, my view of that is might come off a little woo-woo, really,
Yes.
because
My
I
favorite.
think both mushrooms, the bufo alvarius toad, the other plant medicines, and there's many, many, I think they are experiencing a crisis just like we are on this planet. And I do believe they're communicating however they are. I mean, the guy who first did 5-MeO that we know of in 1955, like somehow thought, I think I'll collect this goo out of the toad and smoke it. Like, why would you do that? I don't know. But somehow they got together, that toad and that. So I know that's kind of weird, but like, how do acupuncturists figure out that you mix fly wings with, you know, these are part of the mystery, I think. My feeling about why this medicine I immediately knew was my medicine. And I don't know that that's for a whole life. I think that's changed. My years with LSD, I certainly wouldn't trade them. And I do other things. I see what the journeys are and how they inform. But there's something that I get from this intersection of these three medicines that is urging me to explore it further. And I know that's not your medicine. And I think we pay attention. That's why there's a many medicines, because there's something that's innate in us that melds with that. And it is fascinating. There's another fascinating thing that's being researched is that after you do a 5-MeO journey, it gives you neuroplasticity for, around 30 days. So this gives you the opportunity to make shifts in your behavior in ways that are positive. Like I do it with kind of coming grounding. When I notice a thought in my mind that isn't a kind thought, I don't really indulge that. I want to be kind. So I come back and it takes a minute, but over and over again, that's part of the way I work with integration with people to integrate that. The experience of dying is right here. I mean, I had had so many of these kinds of experiences on the meditation cushion that it is quite, it's obvious to me that the ego is what dies. Like there's some essence that we all have that doesn't end. I mean, and so it it isn't that it isn't death, the experience of death, but non-duality, or we live in this realm right here is up, down, good, bad, like, hate, it's all dualistic. But when we open to how the connection is, and you see the value in opposites, but you can let go of any preference. And so that's a pretty powerful experience with however you have it. And I think that's what dying is.
Yeah.
That is what I think. Yeah.
Oh, it gives me hope. Thank you. No, thanks for sharing. It's such a profound medicine. And then there's also, like this inherent, I think most humans, I think inherently have that fear built in, like the fear of the unknown, the fear of death, the fear of stepping into a psychedelic space. I mean, I've talked to numerous people about this where it's like, I can go work with the same medicine I've worked with 100 times and there's still that like fear, and I don't know if it's real fear or, just the body or just that kind of like going into the abyss of the unknown of like, we don't know what is going to bring. And that's the beauty of the mystery.
I think
So,
it's not like really fear.
yeah.
But it's like, hey, pay attention here. It's like a little, I mean, every meditation retreat, I don't really notice it when I just sit in the morning, but it's probably there. I'll probably notice it tomorrow morning when, so yeah, I think it's a healthy exploration. I'm the same, every time. And sometimes when I go in, I'm like, oh, I've done it now. Like I have no idea where I am. It's like, where am I? I don't think it's important to push through that, like some medicine has some particular secret. It all, it's all roads lead to Rome. I I at first, when I was working with people that were dying, I was more using mushrooms. I actually think 5-MeO can be with a different root than not using toad. It comes on more gently,
Mm.
and but it's still quite profound. But it doesn't do that shot out of a cannon thing. That's can be very disorienting to people. And so I think any psychedelic mushroom, any psychedelic can eliminate the fear of death, or certainly help with it. You can see that something other than this body is what's important, because you go past all the senses, all of them, including thinking.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about the death work. I've had a few clients that are death doulas.
Yeah.
It's been I've always said, like, I really love serving people in this death world because I feel like it's so important that, we do it a little differently than we are. I'm going into my third parent who's going to be dying, and it's like, wow, it's just, you see a lot of the industry and the way it's done, and the kind of, there's a lack of ritual, and there's a lack of presence in it, and that's kind of the traditional way, at least here in America. And I've had some clients who have come up with, they're working in, like you said, like medicine and the fear of death, or alternative ways of dying, or alternative burials, or what we might call like kind of the lesser popular options. But what was your inspiration for wanting to go be a death doula, and then now you're in an additional death course or workshop program? And what are your wishes for the way that our society works with death? Like, what are your views on it?
Well, I've got a lot of views, as you might imagine, and I totally agree with you. The death industry is not the way I would choose to die. I mean, if I could have my way, I'd just be left up on the mountaintop for the critters to have their way with me. But
That's what my dad used to say, by the way. My dad used to say, take me out to the desert with a bottle of bourbon and throw me to the wolves.
I've witnessed. I've not been to the funeral, but I've seen that in Bhutan, and it is, um, it's something. It really is. It's nature.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see a lot of dead animals around you in nature. You just don't, because they're consumed and transformed, as are we. But we have pretty many toxic ways of dealing with death. And that's what Henry saw when he first started had the concept of a death doula. He had been a birth doula, and he saw that's what it needs, that ritual, that sacredness. And I don't know if you've been with either of your parents that have died, but it's pretty profound to be with that transition, to be present for it. I'd like to see death being discussed all the time. Have as a regular part of life, because it's a big thing. The fact it colors all of life in the very deep truth of impermanence. If we could just go on forever, it would be kind of different. You know, we would have to be kind. If we were going to keep lasting. I ran a little death cafe where I live. It wasn't a true death cafe as they were envisioned. And people were very uncomfortable with talking about it. And especially, I think the doing it in your own community is probably wasn't as skillful a choice because people worry about revealing themselves to, I'm not like that. I'm more transparent, but people do worry about other people knowing their thoughts and beliefs and sicknesses and all, you name it. There's somebody here worrying about it. But I think I attend death cafes and I appreciate them. It's just and I appreciate everybody, just an opportunity to talk about it where you're not stifled. So yeah, in my view, it would be great to have death in normal conversation. Yeah, I know.
Look at me, I'm like,
I know. Yeah.
because it's so, I mean, it's interesting because I have some friends that do death work and these former clients. And, I did this like really amazing, profound grief ritual last year that was like life changing. And I've been exploring this more, especially with the history of psychedelics. It's like, how many times have I confronted my own death? Like so many times, it's like, I can't even tell you where it's like, I've seen my death. I've felt like I was dying. I've been brought to that edge of, you know, um, just not even feeling myself where it's like, oh, is this kind of the edge of death? Like, is this what it starts to feel like? So I've been curious about it. But when I cringe and go like this, I think of our society. It's like even back when the pandemic hit, it was like so much fear around the death. And yeah, and it was scary. It's like no one knew what was happening. All we heard was the media. But then I was like, well, maybe there's something deeper here. It's like, why are we so afraid? And what is this like? A lot of people trying to pretend that it's not real and like constantly trying to just like outdo death, right? Even though it's inevitable no matter what happens. But what do you think is going on in kind of the larger society when it comes to death, and compared to maybe how we did it hundreds or thousands of years ago? Like, what do you think is went wrong, and what do you think could be a possibility for our future?
Well, when our grandfathers were dying, they were just lied to. You'll be fine. Don't tell grandpa. That was that attitude. So we've come some distance with being open about it, but you're right. And I think, well, okay, first of all, this realm, this here we are, what is sometimes referred to as reality, um, is dualistic. And to me, it's kind of a fascinating time. Like I see, and you see in your work too, there's all these flourishing new explorations going on and care and consciousness is expanding and people really care and are positive. At the same time, we just elected a surprising person as a leader. And it's the opposite of where I'd want to follow. So both are happening at the same time and kind of in the same balance. And how it's going to turn out, I don't know. I have views on it, but they're kind of, we don't need to go into them. I think it's, I think it's quite an interesting time. I'm glad I'm here for the amount I have left. But I don't think dying, I mean, at this stage in my life, I think it's my next great adventure. And I don't always use psychedelics with people that are dying. It has to be okay and appropriate. I would say most of the time it's not.
Mhm.
And I also don't, I do serve without people being dying, probably much more. Because when you are working with somebody that's very ill, really coming into the end of life, I mean, I have a cohort, a colleague that she's been present where she's actually given medicine, and there's another person in the room, a medical person, that's giving the poison to, because in California you can take your own life, and I mean that seems like that's I don't wouldn't do that. but it's an option. More options are available all the time. And you can go to Switzerland and you can die for any reason you wish.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's it's wild out there. Like people are exploring, and I mean, you probably know more about that than I do because you well, it's we all have just little bites,
Mm.
but yeah, it's really just this fleshy part that's dying. I mean, I know you. I, I had a journey recently where it it went so far, and when there was enough thought ability, I remember having this thought of am I going back? And it felt as if I could maybe even go anywhere I wanted at that time. And it felt almost like a choice. Is that crazy? I mean,
I've had that a couple times.
and yeah, I came back.
Good. We need you here for at least a little while.
Thing I can't say that thought exactly was, but the undoneness of it for me and what else? I don't know. I mean, I'm not all the way awake, so let's see. But it takes away the fear completely. I mean, I don't even I'm enthusiastic. I look forward to it. I know, is that wacky?
No, I
I
love it. I love it. Do you think that's because of the medicines or because of the meditation or a combination of both?
Yeah, it's all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And also my dear son, you know, when it happened, it was like for months. This was just not okay. This was just not okay. There was no possible value in this. And in Stephen Levine's Who Dies, there was this speculation of, okay, what if these two souls are they get into cahoots and they decide, okay, you be the mom, I'll be the kid, and we'll learn that lesson. It was much more beautifully written than that. And it wasn't that I believed that for any stretch of the imagination, but it was at least a possible explanation for what might have so there is one at least possible thing at that point. And that was kind of the beginning of various explorations that I had and work that I focused on and read the Tibetan Book of the Dead and various explorations of how this could have any meaning besides agony. So it led me to growth and exploration and
Mm-hmm.
wisdom. And I didn't go heavily into psychedelics at all then. It was it I wouldn't have been able to take it, I don't think. It would be just too intense. But I sure hit the cushion, and in my Aries fashion, I went to Burma, I went to Bhutan, I went in the dark. I would try in long, long retreats. So it's all of value.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my God. You've really lived like, I mean, a darkness retreat, even that. I mean, I had first heard about that a long time ago and I was like, wow, that that just doesn't sound of any interest. I mean, maybe I could probably get into it, but is it
Don't try to
like
do the things that aren't of interest. Do the things that are interesting to you.
interesting? Yeah.
I don't mean
Yeah.
unskillful things.
Yeah.
No, explore the
Yeah.
there's no right path,
Exactly.
you know, but commit to it. And if it gets a little uncomfortable, stick with it
Oh,
then.
that's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, right?
Right.
Yeah, maybe one day I would do it because I love meditation. I love psychedelics. I just, I'm like, ah, darkness. But I could see where it's of interest and exploration and learning, like, and which I love. But, um, I'm curious. What do you what do you believe that? our future might have in store for it when it comes to the death process as a society. Like, do you believe there's a potential that in 50 years or 100 years or hopefully even less, maybe 20 years, like there might be a difference? Because the death doula movement has been growing. There's more and
Yeah,
more of these programs, there's more people talking about it. I don't feel like it's hit the mainstream yet. I mean, honestly,
right.
even I even called one of my own clients for help recently, and I was like, I don't even know sometimes what it seems like every death doula has different offerings. Like there's not I don't
Yeah.
even know what a death doula truly does because they're all a little different. But yeah, where do you think this could go in 20, 40 years?
Well, it's not alive on the planet in isolation.
Mhm.
What's going to happen in the next 4 years? I think we're going to see a lot of death. And we come in, I don't know with if you the concept of karma is meaningful to people that are hearing here, but you can see that on the planet that there's people that do a lot of suffering. There are millions of people that don't have a homeland, that are in refugee camps or dying at sea trying to get away from brutality, or there's a lot of people that are in really, really difficult circumstances. And I live here in California. We got a governor that is got a lot of protections in place for the people that are really vulnerable. It doesn't escape the privilege. The privilege that I have doesn't escape me. I really feel it. And now that might change. I mean, it might be a target. So I think all of these things are have a big effect. The climate is not a joke, and humanity is not the most important thing in the universe. It's like the end. I think it's been obvious for a while that we're living through the decline of the empire. So, but we're getting kind of out there in these kind of conversations. But I believe it. And I don't know whether humanity will survive it. I don't know. And I probably won't live to see it, whether how it comes out, because I don't think the planet is not going to just explode or anything. The planet will be fine, with or without dinosaurs, with or without humans. It's like,
Exactly.
but that's
Thank
radical.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. And by the way, I love the out there stuff. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I know, but this isn't just us. I'm realizing, but you get right in. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's like these are the real things that matter, It's like life, death, the future, where are we going? Where are we heading? I mean, it's also I mean, who knows? It's the unknown, and we have to be comfortable with just sitting in the unknown and praying, praying for the highest and best, and really doing our own inner work to navigate these times and also be able to serve. That's a huge part of this is how are we showing up in our soul's purpose. And to see you going, how old, you said you're 81?
yeah.
You're still going, you're still out there. Tell us a little bit about this. You're also in a new training. I would like to actually hear about this and also what inspires you to keep learning.
Well, I think we have to do that. I mean, I have to do my own practices. Yeah, I'm not in a training exactly. It's a course that Andrew offers.
Mhm.
And, if I could boil it down to an essence and speak for Andrew, which are two impossible things, but right between every thought, every moment, right between every day, every lifetime, it's the same as what happens in the bardo. They're all bardos, they're all transitions. We often are transitioning. If we just notice that, just, do it, set an intention for the week and just notice all the transitions. And they get smaller and smaller and smaller as we start to really work with just that concept. Yeah, and I felt like I didn't really understand the practical parts of bardo transitioning. And so I had the opportunity to take this course with Andrew. I think he's one of the best. And he's been teaching on Bardos for a long time. So this 3 months is really quite amazing. And it's also kicking my butt, I gotta say. It's so intense. It's so filled with things I have to listen to and read and listen to and attend, and that I have this feeling, but we will have access always to the materials, the readings. So
Yeah.
it's just part of my own personal work, but it informs everything I do.
Yeah, and it's also it's just interesting because you're coming at a lot of this with also this psychedelic lens, right?
Hmm.
And like, how do you think do you believe that there's an interconnection to the work that you do as, let's say, a devout Buddhist practitioner versus a psychonaut? What are the benefits to having the psychedelic experience and the Buddhist experience versus just like, oh, you meditate daily for 10 minutes and that's it? Like,
Well, I'm here to wake up. That's my bottom line area of interest. So I want to be in a world where I know what's going on, what I'm doing, and when I'm doing it. I don't want to look back on tomorrow and go, oh yeah, I went over there, and no, in the moment I want to be present with what I'm doing. And so my psychedelic work informs that. I'm not interested in ever serving anyone who just wants to try 5-MeO because it sounds cool. Those kind of people, I'm not interested. I honestly don't think 5-MeO for most people that are under 40 is of any value, because there's not much. There's many exceptions to that. There are, but in general, my ears perk up if somebody's under 40 and coming to me, and I don't seem to draw too much of it. It's there needs to have been discipline and a certain level of understanding the way things really are. And it's with any with any psychedelic, no, maybe. I mean, I survived the LSD era, so what can I say? Don't do what I do. Uh, I wouldn't say that, but I probably wouldn't serve it. It's
wow.
not a party. It's not a party experience. It's right up there with going on a meditation retreat, which is no small thing. It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny because there are people that I'm sure, I mean, I don't know, I haven't met them myself either. There are people that are probably like, well, I keep hearing about this and I hear that it does XYZ. I mean, it's kind of like the whole, I hear that, mushrooms can heal my depression, which
Uh,
we all
yeah.
know is, it's with the work. It's like you said, you have to show up. It's the day to day.
Of course, we all have that. We're hardwired on at a physical level to want what's pleasant, push away what is unpleasant. However, what I think when my work is to expand my ability to take whatever comes down, because I have no control over what happens outside of me. All the choice I have is how I respond to whatever does come down the road. So the more things I can say yes to, that the better off I am. They asked Krishnamurti what he learned after all his years of practice, and he says, "I don't mind what happens," and that's it.
Liberation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm consciously growing, appropriate response to whatever happens. And the mindfulness is brought in, I'm pretty mindful of what's happening. And so when I'm off, I notice it when I'm having repetitive, disapproval of the way it is, wishing things were otherwise. That's a red flag in my world. Yeah.
I know, right? Like the rumination, like over and over. I mean, it's so prevalent in our society where it's like, okay, so many of us want to see the world change, and it's this hard balance between, accepting what it is and not getting caught in that cycle of hate and violence and like just yelling at people. I mean, like the last few weeks, there's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of just the last months, years even, it's probably going to continue where I'm like, there is a point where, is that really the solution? Is just to fight more, like hate our neighbors and friends? I mean, I have a couple friends that quit speaking to me, and it's unfortunate. It's like, well, okay, whatever, people will do what they need to do. But at the same time, it's like, how do we be with what is and also continue to plant our seeds of like our own, doing our own inner work to create a better world? I don't know. I mean, it's a constant like
It
struggle
is.
that I'm sitting with, always kind of back and forth between like showing up for the world I want to see and upset
Right.
about certain things too.
Yeah, that's it. That's our life's work.
And trying to direct the energy into more like, well, how can I do what I can do, like show up
That's
for
right.
your clients and do the training and speak your truth when necessary without hopefully causing harm, right? So I don't know.
Rebecca Solnit, I thought, had a great, well, she wrote a much larger thing than this semi quote is that, we aren't going to be able to save everything, but we can save some things. And the things we save are important.
Mm,
And yeah, that's truth.
that's a good one. Yeah.
Our culture influences us so much. Like we were talking before about the death culture, but we live in a youth culture, an how many times a day do we see the words anti-aging? No, pro-aging. I'm pro-aging. You know, and so there's a way of holding it that is informative and nourishing. But when you're in resistance, and I think the system is pretty good, you lose your beauty, you have to develop other aspects, and if you can just and you can these days, you can do needlework and all sorts of things to yourself to not appear to be old. And I think it's even scarier to die then because you haven't had the buildup, the preparation work. These wrinkles are preparation, for what's coming.
The
They
wisdom.
Hey, well, there's wisdom in the mind. There can be, but there's not. The body is made of flesh and it's decaying. Yeah, it's on its way out.
Mm.
Yeah, I think
Actually,
it's.
it's really interesting you bring that up because I'm like, wow, I see people who do a lot of the, fake Botox or fillers or surgeries, and I just think they look plastic and weird, Like to me, I think it's beautiful when someone's just,
Not all of them do. Not all of them you can tell. The ones that they do with lots of money, you can't really. I
oh,
know the thing you're talking about, where the lips go funny and all.
yeah, they just look different than who they really are. And I think there's a beauty in the natural
Yeah.
evolution. But actually, it's interesting. I'm like, well, what happens when they're 97? They just, yeah, or they pass and then they're just plastic. I mean, I don't know. It's a little weird. I'm not a fan of it. It's not my jam.
I would say that
Water.
one of the things I notice is vanity doesn't end, you know. And so, but way back when I was a young elder, I did these eldering courses and just to be pro-aging.
Mm.
And I would say things like, yeah, no, plastic surgery doesn't interest me. I want to see how I turn out, what this all adds up to. And it involves taking care of myself to a degree. I put things on my face. I even sometimes get my eyebrows dyed, you know? So it's like
Masterful. Yeah.
that's a cultural influence, though, and I acknowledge that. Yeah, so yeah, it's really a shame we just don't. When I went to Burma, a woman my age would just walk down the street and I was like a magnet. And plus I was white skinned and, obviously a foreign person. I mean, I would get invited to come over to my house for dinner and, things like that. It was great. And helping anytime I needed anything, I got help. And then I got back to San Francisco and I couldn't get help with my luggage. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm invisible again. So the culture does really affect how you're received and consequently how you view yourself. So I think it's really good to really feel the animal and to really feel the connection and then gradually integrate it with this reality.
And thank you for sharing that. I think this is also why, I really appreciate certain traditions and cultures, like Native American and a lot of the medicine world and down, when you go down to Peru, it's like you
Yeah.
work with the elders and the Pacos and the curanderos the elders that have been serving for 40 years. And it's like, oh, like we want to listen and learn from them. And so I do appreciate like the path I'm on tends to actually really value the elders much more. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm so grateful the people I work with have been at it for 40, 50 years. My teachers, it's like, wow, I'm so honored that you are sharing this wisdom after, a lifetime. So, hopefully we have more of these conversations. This will change. And I think, I keep seeing like the awakening of humanity is hopefully this will change as a culture, but we'll see. Who knows?
I think it is changing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy in California anyway. It's very easy and to find like-minded people, whatever your mind is like. There's to explore and really hone in on opportunities that really are appropriate for your own self. And I admire and appreciate your connection to Peru and dieta and plant. You have relationships with plants.
I love my
Yes.
plants. Mine. Not mine. I love the plants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, well, I have to wrap up because I have another call after this, but I want people to find out, if you can share a little bit about where they can find you, if they want to work with you, or if you have anything you want to share.
So I have an email, medicine Crone at Gmail, and they can reach out to me there. Don't be careful what you say. It's a public email, and then we'll get it connected. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. And I really admire how you've honed your skills and you mix it all together too in just wonderful ways. So somebody should be interviewing you.
Somebody. Once in a while someone will interview me. Thank you. I try, like I really every day it's part of my practice. It's like, I wake up, I greet the sun, I greet the earth, the water, I say some prayers, and it's like, I really see it as like, okay, just use me as a vessel. It's like I don't know why I'm incarnated here. Sometimes it confuses me. Like, did I really ask to be alive during this crazy time? So then it's like, well, life is a gift. I love my life. I love the beauty of this earth, this world, the birds outside, everything. And it's like, well, how can I give back? That's all I say to people. It's like, just ask like, okay, how can I give back? Even if
Well,
it's
and that's such a
holding.
reciprocal thing to happen. It's only because of your genuine commitment to your own awakening that people trust you.
Aw.
It's yeah, no, yeah.
I just said to my friend who's also a devout Buddhist that I saw the other day, and I was like, when are we doing another silent retreat? I could really use one like right now, like a long one. 'Cause it's so easy to fit in like a day or a half day or whatever, but ooh, It's about time I go on like another. I would love to do like a 7 or 10 day, one of these, hopefully in the next 6 months at some point.
On the day you go, on day 2 of the retreat, remember you said that.
I know when I'm like, why?
Why did I do this
It's
again?
so funny because, the most I've done is a 10-day Vipassana, but I've done these, dietas that are pretty close. They're really boring and you're
Yeah.
not really interacting with anyone. There's no social, there's no social aspect of it. But it's weird. I never ended up having that thought. I remember having the pain, like the physical, but never the like, oh my God, I wish I wasn't here. I was just kind of like, yeah, let's see what happens.
Good for you.
And now I'm like, oh my God, I could really use one. And now it's more just like, I see it almost as a luxury. It's like, oh, if I could just go on
Yeah.
a 10-day disconnect and
Yeah. Well, you can. You live near a great center.
yeah, there's actually a whole bunch. I am very blessed around here.
There are.
I might go for New Year's Eve. There's one
Oh, yeah.
around the New Year's, which is always nice. So, well, Quilley, it was so nice having you. You're such a blessing to this world. I'm so glad we did this, and I got to
Thank
hear
you
your
so much.
story. And
I really appreciate it.
yeah, it's just amazing, and I can't wait to see what comes out next with you.
Me too.
Many blessings to you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.